I'm Dr. Michelle Burden, along with Dr. Lisa Burkhart-Worley, and welcome to Pop Talk Radio. This is the program where you never know what topics might pop up. Do you need physical healing? Do you want to prevent disease? Then you'll want to hear what today's guest has to say about this very important topic. Dr. Lisa has the introduction.
Well, thanks, Dr. Michelle. Our guest today is Ginny Dent Brant. Ginny is an author and a speaker, as well as a counselor, wellness advocate, and an adjunct professor. Ginny wrote an award-winning book called Finding True Freedom: From the White House to the World. That book was endorsed by Chuck Colson and featured in many media interviews. She was interviewed by CBN, CTN, Atlanta Live, American Family Radio, Charisma Podcast, and Life Today Live. Impressive. And now Ginny has written a new book. It's called Unleash Your God-Given Healing: 8 Steps to Prevent and Survive Cancer. And we're going to talk about that one today. So Ginny, it is so great to see you again, to have you on Pop Talk. I am so interested in hearing what you have to say today. And I know a lot of our listeners are going to be interested, especially those who are struggling with a disease. And you dealt with your own health crisis when you received a cancer diagnosis. Can you share about how that diagnosis impacted you?
Well, to be perfectly honest, ladies, I was diagnosed just 4 months after my mother died from breast cancer. So I had just been through the nightmare with her. And so my initial response was shock, denial, and fear. And to be perfectly honest, I struggled spiritually with my diagnosis because I was known as a health nut. And in desperation, I went to the hospital chaplain at my cancer center. And he looked at me and he said, Ginny, I know your cancer doesn't make any sense, but I want you to look at it as a gift from God for you to help other people. He said, you're an author, you're a speaker. Think of how many people you could communicate your message to. And I looked at him and I said, but you don't understand. I don't want this gift. But that just shows you how I felt. I didn't want to talk about cancer. I didn't want anyone to know I had it. But God had to do a work in my heart. But I knew, even though I got the diagnosis, that whatever happened, God was going to make good on this cancer journey. Whether I lived or whether I died, He was going to use it for good. And that's what I dwelt on.
That is amazing. Thank you for that. So what are some of the major takeaways, Ginny, that you learned during your cancer journey?
There were so many things I did not know that I had to learn through the school of hard knocks. And the first one is that our body was created by God to heal and restore on a daily basis. In fact, as we're doing this interview, all of our bodies are performing miracles as we speak. Now, here's the clincher. When we engage in deep sleep, those miracles are only intensify, because that deep sleep is when our body does most of its healing and repairing. So that's one key that I learned. Another key is that 70 to 80% of our immune system lies in our gut lining. And so that makes what we eat matter. God created our bodies not to eat a processed diet. In most of my life, I ate a highly processed diet. But God tells us in Genesis 1:29, what He created for us to eat that complements our body and our DNA and keeps us healthy. And that would include these seed-bearing plants. And that would be fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and beans and legumes and herbs and spices. Now, He later allowed certain meats, but guess which foods Americans eat the least of?
We have no idea.
These exact foods that God created for us to eat is what we're getting the least of, and that is part of the problem. These plants, seed-bearing plants, are filled with nutrients, fiber, phytochemicals, and antioxidants, which all help to fight cancer and diseases. And today, scientists can tell you every one of the technical antioxidant and phytochemical terms that each one of these plants have, and they all promote healing in the body.
That is so interesting, Jenny. And we actually just had somebody on the show that talked about the 7 biblical foods of the promised land, and it was something similar. These are the foods that
That
God.
must have been my friend Annette Reeder.
It was. It was.
Of course, yes.
But she's gosh, this is a double conviction after talking to her and then talking to you. It's like no more boxed mac and cheese or a hamburger helper or any of that stuff. But one of the things you said was about sleep, and I go very hard during the day. I'm in my 60s. I still move very fast. I do a lot. And but I try to make sure I get my sleep, 7 to 8 hours a night at least. And I think that makes a difference in my energy level during the day. I feel, a lot of people don't sleep because they feel like they lose productive time, but I think that's the most important thing you can do to live a long life. So you ended up writing this book, Unleash Your God-Given Healing. What made you decide to write this book? Was it because of your cancer journey? And can you share some of the things that you include in it? I know you've shared a little bit already.
Yeah. Well, my diagnosis sent me on a quest to discover why I got an aggressive and deadly cancer I had no risk factors for, according to my doctors, and no genetics either. And so I wanted to find out what I could do to help my doctors to beat my cancer and to minimize the side effects of the treatment. So I went through about 50 different books that I read from cover to cover. I attended medical and cancer conventions online and in person, and I was trained as a researcher in college. Did not finish my PhD, but got all the research courses in. And so I knew how to go through the journals and look at the research. And I did all this to connect the dots between the Bible, nutrition, the science of how God created the immune system to work, and conventional and integrative, the best of both of those medicines. And so after I did all this, even though I didn't want to write the book, and I wrestled with God over it, I wrote the book so that other people would have this information because it was too much work to go through not to be able to share it with other people. Because I started to realize that there were everyday things I was doing that helped to open the door for me to get cancer. And other people are doing those same simple things, not realizing it.
What's so interesting, Ginny, is that the chaplain was actually right because he did say that you'd be able to use your voice in just a certain way. I know you didn't want to hear that right at that time, but
No, I didn't.
he wanted to, I think it was kind of like an assurance, especially when you're going through something difficult like that. You never really want to hear, certain things, but they wind up coming back full circle. So I think that's just absolutely incredible about that. But share with us, what are some of the nuggets of truth that could help people prevent cancer from ever occurring?
Well, one of the main ones is what we just discussed, that our immune system is highly related to not only our gut, but the amount of sleep that we get, because that deep restorative sleep is when our body heals and repairs, but also detoxes. And it's like a surveillance system. It detects cancer cells and kills them. So, what people don't realize is when you are sleep deprived, you have a 70% reduction in your natural killer cells. So, you're more likely to catch a cold the next day if you're sleep deprived. And if you are sleep deprived over time, your cancer cells can form. And if you already have cancer, they can grow and multiply. So, sleep is a key to preventing cancer and for kind of holding it at bay and not letting it get out of hand. So that's important. Another thing people don't realize is what is proper hydration. Literally, every body system and every cell in your body needs proper hydration in order to work properly. And that includes your immune system, but it's every system in your body. So if you are chronically dehydrated, you are opening the door to many diseases, including cancer. And then another thing that people don't think about, I certainly didn't think about until I had to think about it, is that our bodies carry a toxic load today, some higher than others. And it's because we live in a day when there are 80,000 toxic chemicals in our environment that were not there 100 years ago. So we're dealing with something that people before us did not have to deal with. And if you research risk factors and causes of cancer by type, by going to MD Anderson, Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, whatever, you will find that 18% of cancers have listed have listed in their risk factors high toxic load. And I work with a lot of veterans, and a lot of our veterans that have cancer have high toxic loads due to their service. So we have to consider, what is our toxic load? Some people may have a high toxic load, some people may not. But in my case, we found out after years of research and testing that yes, I had a very high toxic load.
So are you talking like Agent Orange, or what are you talking about? The exposure, or you didn't say it.
Yeah, well, actually, there were about 20 chemicals high in my body, and believe it or not, glyphosate was one of them. And glyphosate is an endocrine disrupting chemical agent that's sprayed on our food. But you mentioned Agent Orange. Yes, one of the Agent Orange pesticides was found at high levels in my body. And when I showed the profile to my oncologist, he looked and he goes, "Oh, you didn't tell me you served in Vietnam." And I said, "I didn't."
Wow.
He said, "Well, your levels are as high as some of our, Vietnam vets, but there are two Agent Orange chemicals, and mine was the one that was not considered as dangerous as the one, that a lot of the veterans have."
So, Jenny, do you know much about these things? You can see it, nobody else can. The water bottles. Now, you said it's important to stay hydrated, but should we stay away from water bottles? I've heard so many negative things about them.
Absolutely. And this is what I've got instead. I've got my steel Yeti. You need to drink from glass and china and steel, because the water bottles, especially when they're heated, even if they're not heated, you're going to get a little bit of estrogenic chemicals. And men don't need that, and women don't need that. So I don't drink from water bottles anymore unless I'm on a mission trip or in a third world country where I have no choice,
Okay.
because the water is more important than the little bit of estrogenic chemical you're going to get in each water bottle.
I'm trying to cut them out. I am. I've got a bunch of water bottles in my refrigerator, but I am trying when I'm home to drink more from the glass because I know how bad it is. Now, let me ask you another one. I've been experiencing some issues with inflammation lately. So I've been reviewing the ingredients on my skincare products and wondering if they may not be healthy for me. Have you ever looked at your skincare products? Major companies produce these products, and you say that 60 to 70% of them, those products that we put on our skin, either enter our bloodstream or they cause other problems. Are the creams and cleansers safe? And if not, what should we be putting on our skin?
Well, most of them, to be perfectly honest, are not safe. And to prove to you how it gets into your bloodstream, if you've ever had a doctor prescribe a medication for you to be placed on your skin, what they're doing is trying to get it directly into your bloodstream and avoiding it going through your stomach, because your skin is highly absorbable. So you can take a medication that way. Well, what we don't realize is we're lathering up our skin with all these personal care products, and we don't think to look on the label and see what's in it. When you see 10 different names of things you can't even pronounce, you've got a problem. So I suggest that people buy things that claim they go by the European standard. Europe does not allow a lot of chemicals that we allow in our country. There are about 300 chemicals they will not allow that Americans put in everyday things. And so if you hear like RFK Jr. or one of these people say, "Well, we go by the European standard," or a cosmetic company, that's a good thing. So you want things that go by the European standard, not the American standard, because in America, cosmetic industry is not regulated by the FDA. It is the wild, wild west, and they can put pretty much anything in there that they want. And I've made several videos on this. I have a YouTube channel. I've done about 10 videos on all these different chemicals that are coming in through our skin and what to look for and how to read labels. So it's just a lot of information there. Again, I knew nothing about this until I got cancer.
That is very cool that you know all this information. You've studied all of this. It's certainly going to help our audience as well. with a lot of the things that we do just on a day-to-day basis that we never really even think about. And I know that's one way with the inflammation that Lisa talked about, but that toxins are getting into our bodies. But what are other ways that toxins are entering into our bodies?
They're coming through the food we eat because of the pesticide and herbicide residue. They're coming in the water we drink because all these chemicals get into the water table. And it's not your water company's job to remove everything and give it to you 100% pure. That is not possible. So I tell people to filter their water further. Consider that your responsibility once it comes to your house bacteria free. Take it further and get the chemicals out. And then it's in the air we breathe. But let me go back and say this. There is one video I've done, and it's in my book as well, where I go through what an average woman, every chemical an average woman comes in contact with in one day. And it turns out to be about 75 chemicals. And that one video or that one part of my book will open your eyes as to the toxins all around us and how we come in contact with them on an everyday basis.
That is frightening. I mean,
It
it's
is
absolutely
frightening.
frightening, especially if you are just living in a normal day. I mean, you're not in a polluted city or anything like that. You're just going through life normally. I keep thinking about the things I put on my face and what I see on those labels. I just can't get past that. And
And Lisa,
I
most of
know,
the toxins come right in your own home.
yeah.
Things we clean with, things that, I mean, all it's just all around us. So when you read that part of my book, it will open your eyes to what you need to change. There are some things that none of us can change. We can't change the air that we breathe, but if we're in a polluted area, we can close the windows and we can ventilate inside with air filtration systems. A lot of missionaries live on the field. India is one of the most polluted countries in the world. I've been there. China is one of the most polluted countries in the world. And so our missionaries there have to do things like filter the air inside their home because they cannot control where God called them to work.
Well, you have to do what you have to do. Now,
That's
you
right.
you say in your book that we are living in an estrogenic world. You used that term earlier in the show. What do you mean by that exactly?
This question of, this searching for why I got an estrogen fed cancer for which I had no genetics, no risk factors. And my previous test, even a year before and before that, showed I had no high estrogen levels. So nothing made sense about my cancer case, according to my doctors and according to me. And so I learned that men are getting breast cancer, and of the men who get it, 90% are estrogen fed. Now, that's puzzling. So I went to this convention out west, a cancer convention, and I ate lunch with a Canadian cancer coach. And she looks at me and she said, "Well, Jenny, I can explain it to you." She said, "We're living in an estrogenic world. And that's why you got an estrogen fed cancer when you didn't have high estrogen levels." Now, then I thought she was kind of crazy. I didn't know what she was talking about. But now I know that there are xenoestrogens, and these are chemicals that mimic estrogen. They're in the air, they're in our water, in our food, and in the products we use to clean our homes and our personal care products. And they're combining with our own body's estrogen to increase our estrogen levels. And here's the deal about this. In the end, this was found. My doctors finally found a major cause of my cancer. And it was when my chemical profile came back and they said, "Whoa, we didn't know you could measure this. You have all these estrogenic chemicals. There are high levels in your body." And so my oncologist and my gynecologist both said that they were seeing more and more of this every year, that these estrogenic chemicals were having an impact on many people's breast cancers.
Wow,
Now
that
that's
is so
alarming.
interesting. Yes. And so I know that men deal with some of the estrogen a little bit in their bodies too. So I'm sure they're going to be curious. You need to write a book about men, find out that about men. But um,
Right. And now the American Cancer Society and breastcancer.org are mentioning these xenoestrogens, one being stronger and cautioning people about them than the other. But I'm now hearing of doctors who've been telling their patients for years, stay away from anything that any like eggs and milk and meat, where hormones have been added to get more milk and more meat, because that's being
wow.
passed on to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did not know that. So I know that you suffered from breast cancer. What are some of the risk factors for getting breast cancer?
Well, let's start with the top five for all cancers because that affects breast cancer. Obesity is the number one risk factor for any cancer, and that's followed by the sedentary lifestyle, which doctors now call the new smoking, and then smoking cigarettes, drinking too much alcohol, and eating a highly processed diet. Those are the top five that affect all cancers, breast cancer included. Then the next one would be age. When you get older, your mitochondria becomes weaker, your cells become weaker, and so you're more likely to get cancer, and you can't do anything about your age. But for breast cancer specifically, anything that increases your estrogen levels, such as taking the birth control pill and taking hormones after menopause, are specific risk factors for breast cancer. Now, I recently did a video, a YouTube video, on the benefits of breastfeeding, not just for the baby, but for the mom, because breastfeeding does the opposite. It lowers your risk for breast cancer and other female cancers. And so these are the main things. And then another one has come up recently that they've just added in the last few years, and that's having dense breast tissues, which 50% of people, of women in America have today. Makes it harder to detect. And there's something about the dense breast tissue that makes you more likely to get cancer, but it's not, it doesn't determine that you're going to get cancer, that in and of itself. And then there are two that they don't talk about at all, the American Cancer Society. Oh, they mentioned it, but that's the xenoestrogens, and they don't ever mention stress. What long-term chronic stress does to the body, it suppresses your immune system. Anything that suppresses your immune system chronically is going to open the door for many diseases, including cancer.
Those are very important to know, and really these are things that we can combat. We can overcome stress with the peace of God and ask the Lord to just envelop us
Absolutely.
with his peace, and we can watch our weight, and we can not eat a lot of fattening foods. I know I keep saying I'm going to give up bread. I've got to do it. I've got to give up some of these things that add weight. So one of the things we didn't talk about, Jenny, is exercise. I love to walk. I try to do it at least every other day. How important is exercise for staying healthy, and how much exercise should we be engaging in?
Exercise is key to healthy living, longevity, and cancer prevention. It is actually medicine for our bodies. Now, most doctors would recommend about 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic exercise weekly, and strength training for all muscle groups twice a week. But I recommend the aerobic exercise, at least brisk walking, every single day, especially for the cancer patients that I work with. I want them to do it twice a day.
Wow, that is very cool. I love exercising myself too. So I think that's important for sure. And I know that in talking with my doctor as well, he is encouraged as you get older that your body does need to be able to have your muscles strong. So you need to be lifting, not heavy, but just lifting to keep that consistency. So that's very important. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us, Jenny, about the importance of the lymphatic system in our bodies and how we can better take care of that.
Your lymphatic system is the one system of your body systems that doesn't work automatically. All of your body systems work whether we think about it or not. While we're talking, all of our body systems are working, all right? And if we exercise, they're going to work better. The lymphatic system does not work unless you move. And it is your trash disposal system. That's the best way to put it. It takes all these viruses and germs and cancer residue and dead cells and all these things and moves it out of your body with the toxins. And so that's why it's important for my cancer patients. I don't want them just to get exercise 3 times a week. I want them to get exercise several times a day. I did exercise before surgery, after surgery, before chemo, after chemo. I mean, 2 miles before, 2 miles afterwards for the entire year of all of my treatments. And it made a huge difference because exercise has so many benefits for the cancer patient. And part of it is pumping that lymphatic system every day to get the trash out.
Now, what about the system, those actual systems that you have that you can stand on, those machines to do the lymphatic? Have you heard anything about those?
I have one, yes. You can use a power plate. That's what the astronauts use when they come back from space, but that gets expensive. You can use one of those $15 stationary balls and watch TV and just bounce up and down. It's that up and down movement that creates the lymphatic systems, that helps to move it through. So
Well,
anything that's like a pouncing, helps.
that's good. That's good. I need to get one of those big balls now. I've made a list during this show. So you have we only have about a minute. You have a website and a blog, Jenny. Can you share about how you help people through both of those outreaches?
Well, everything comes through my website at www.ginny, Ginny, Brant, Brant.com. My blog is there. The link to my YouTube channel is there. You can sign up for a cancer consult appointment. I'm not here to be your doctor. I'm here to be your lifestyle coach to help you to implement these things so that you can prevent cancer or get through the journey and prevent it from coming back. So everything goes through that website, including the book called Unleash Your God-Given Healing, which is written with a 55-year veteran oncologist. And what he's looking at is not what the doctors do. The book is all about what the patient does and how he sees that as an oncologist.
Well, Jenny, it's so exciting to hear about all of this, and I know that I need to implement some of what you're saying here today. And I imagine a lot of the people listening today, they're going to go and implement what you're saying. And I thank you so much for helping people like you're helping people through this book, which is so important. It's called, again, Unleash Your God-Given Healing, 8 Steps to Prevent and Survive Cancer. And again, I want to give people your website. It's Ginny, Ginny, Brant, Brant.com, GinnyBrant.com. I know people are going to want to go and listen to all the information that you have on your website so that they can get healthier and prevent any kind of disease from coming. So, Jenny, again, thank you so very much for being on Pop Talk.
And we hope you'll connect with us at Pearls of Promise Ministries. You can email us at info@pearlsofpromiseministries.com. You can like us on Facebook at Pearls of Promise Ministries. Follow us on Twitter at Pop Talk Media or at Pearls of Promise, or on Instagram at Pop_Ministries. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Pearls of Promise Ministries to view all of our past Pop Talk television and radio shows and our award-winning documentaries.
So that is Pop Talk for today. We're just ordinary girls
who God turned into pearls. Have a blessed and wonderful day.